Welcome to the MS-Perspektive podcast. Perspective with a K, as I'm German. I'm Nele Handwerker, MS patient, patient advocate and author. I'm bringing you interviews, inspiration and information about living with multiple sclerosis and show you ways how you can positively influence the disease and make the best out of your diagnosis. On ms-perspektive.com you will find the show notes, 11 free tips as a PDF, and lots of other information. And now the show begins.
This podcast is supported by Mid-Mission, a project of the nonprofit Hertie Foundation.
Welcome to episode number 29, Living a Fulfilling Life with MS in the USA, an interview with patient leader Cathy Chester. And now, enjoy the interview. Hello, Cathy. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show and a warm welcome to Raleigh in North Carolina, USA.
Thank you for having me, Nele. I'm so excited to be able to talk with you. Thanks for this wonderful opportunity. And yeah, we're in the southeastern portion of the United States and enjoying the weather here for sure.
Fantastic. And before we start with the interview, it would be lovely if you could introduce yourself to the audience. So, I know you, but they don't know you. So maybe you give a short introduction.
Sure. So my name is Cathy Chester, and I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis back in 1986, before there was any internet and before there were any MS medications. And it was a different world than it is now. I got my diagnosis pretty quickly. But in the meantime, I had been dating a man for a year before my diagnosis, and happily, he still wanted to go ahead and ask me to marry him. So we got married 2 years after my diagnosis, and then we had a son in 1992. So we went forward living a so-called normal life within the MS confines that I'll talk about later. But we're living a rich, full life despite the diagnosis. We live here, like Nele said, in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm happily and anticipating adopting a few more cats after our move. I'm missing having little kitties run around, so we will go to the nearby shelter and see what we see and get some little furry beauties here.
Okay, so how many cats do you have by now?
We lost them all about a year before we moved, and so we just figured it's easier to travel with no cats.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, but traveling, of course, is always easier if you don't have some pets to
The
take
poor
care
little
of.
things. Yeah, not happy for them.
You already shared a little bit of your history with MS, but maybe can you give us some more insight on how it has impacted your life?
Well, I was 28 years old when I was diagnosed. And in the beginning, it really didn't rear its ugly head so much. My fatigue was always an issue. Numbness and weakness were always an issue in my legs, but I was walking fine. It's impacted my life in ways that it's day to day, really. My husband is my best advocate. He comes with me on all of my appointments, and my son has grown up with having MS, with me having MS. So as a family, it's a tight, supportive unit. But going forward, there have been good days and bad days and in between days, and you just kind of roll with it as you go. There have been doctors that have been great and doctors that have been not so good. And it's a learning curve after all. It's 37 years now that I've had it. And I've learned a hell of a lot about how to advocate for yourself and the importance of speaking up for yourself. It's impacted my life in some ways that with relationships sometimes, because you have the need to cancel or you can't keep up with other people. You can't, for instance, play tennis or go for a run or do these mountain hikes, but that's just the nature of it. And I had to learn how to realize that sometimes if people aren't ready to step up for you for who you are, then maybe they're not meant to really be a part of your life. That's a hard lesson. And there's a couple of metamorphoses that keep taking place over the years as you're like the butterfly coming out of the cocoon, and you're learning all the time. So MS has slowed me down for sure, but I will never let it win. And I will always do my best to keep living the best life that I can within my abilities.
Yes. And I guess one or the other people listening now to the show will follow you afterwards and can experience on their own that you are really standing up to that promise, enjoying life, and despite all the issues that sometimes come up with the disease. In your experience, what are some of the most effective coping strategies or self-care practices for managing the daily challenges of living with MS?
That's a great question, because I really believe in complementary medicine, where it's a combination of traditional medicine and holistic therapies. And finding the right strategy that works for you is a very personal thing. So for me, I grew up in a house, so we were surrounded by woods. And then our first house as a married couple, and our son, we were surrounded by woods. So my coping strategy has always been nature, getting outside, breathing in that fresh air, listening to the sounds, seeing the sights, and just trying to, I know it sounds so woo woo, but just trying to be at one with nature. It's so restorative for me to take a walk and listen to a stream, or even a gentle rain, feeling the sun on your back and listening to the birds. That really helps me. And there are even apps that you can get on your phone or on YouTube that can lull you to sleep. And you feel like you're still outdoors with the birds and with the waterfalls and so forth. The other things that I really believe in is meditation. I wake up and do a couple of minutes of meditation with some breath work, with just breathing in, holding it, and letting the air go, and focusing on the breath and trying to accept the thoughts that are coming in, negative and positive. Okay, so you're having a thought. That's okay. But then you let it go and you focus on your breath. And I find that very restorative as well, in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening. And then any of the modalities that they do in for holistically speaking, is, you know, energy medicine, or Tai Chi, or yoga, or Qigong, or even cupping and tapping. There's so many now that were not around years ago when I was diagnosed. And just to explore what works for me to help me cope, to help me de-stress, to help me rewind, to help me calm down. That really, really is so important, not just for me, but for everybody that's listening to this podcast, to find what works for you, what brings you a sense of calm, what gives you a little bit of a break from the ordinary day. I really, really highly recommend just giving it a whirl.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we are living here really near the Elbe River, and just walking on the little street that is, I don't know, it's 5 meters, 6 meters next to the river, and then just looking on the woods, the lovely hills, and the sparkling, no, not sparkling, but the shiny water when there is some sun shining on it. And it's so relaxing and it's so beautiful, and I really enjoy it.
Oh, it sounds beautiful. I think I'm coming to visit you.
Yes, you should do that.
It sounds it.
What do you think? How important is mental health and the emotional well-being for individuals with MS? And what support is available in this regard? I mean, you mentioned already some things you are doing on your own, but
yeah.
maybe additionally.
So mental health was one of those things that in the beginning, when I was diagnosed, people didn't talk about, because there was a terrible stigma attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And going for therapy, people would whisper about it. They wouldn't come forth and say, "Oh, I'm going to therapy and it's really helped me." Well, fortunately, over the years, that's coming to be, it's changed. It's changed in ways that are so positive and beneficial for our community. I think that mental health should be talked about openly. I think it should be discussed. I think people should feel at ease if they're having any issues with achieving mental wellness. And for me myself, I was at a point in my journey that I had a lot of other issues going on. I had gallstones and kidney stones at the same time, and that alone, set my MS off. And my hormones kicked in. I went into a deep depression, and I'd never experienced that before. But there's no shame in seeking help. So I went for a counsel. I got a recommendation for a great therapist, a psychologist, and through talk therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, it helped me in ways that I never, probably never would have achieved if I had tried to go it alone. I was so grateful to my therapist to show me how I could break down the barriers of whatever was making me feel that darkness. Mm-hmm. And it really worked. It really worked. And I go sporadically still to this day when I feel that I need a little tune-up, So I think that addressing it and openly discussing it with other people. And there are support groups around if people need them, but seek a qualified therapist or a spiritual counsel of any kind, or just with your trusted loved ones. Just talk about it. Just talk about it. It's so important.
Absolutely. And so far, I haven't experienced depression. But when I went to the psychologist, I did that for, I think, 1.5 years because my psychologist had some health issues on her own. So it would have been 1 year if it would be all in one, once a week. And it was so helpful. I mean, it cleaned up so many, let's say, garbage, which was there in my psyche. And
that's right.
Before that, I had migraine very often and headache, and after that, I mean, every now and then, but not clearly a few times a month with medication not working, and so good. Can be so good.
And that's the thing, that the things aren't always solved just by medication, that there are other ways around that or along with it that people can do. And so finding the way that will work for you is so important. I just can't stress that enough. And let's have our community talk about that. Let's have our community discuss mental health, mental wellness, what works for you, what didn't work for you, what do you like. I think that as a community, we should come together and help each other because let's face it, MS, it can be a really cruel dictator when it feels like it. And it can change your life in ways that you never expected. So we have to stay as mentally sound as we possibly can, especially as we get older. So that's why I think it's very important to have discussions like this. I'm so glad you asked me this question. As you could tell, my voice got a little louder because I think it's so important, when you hear about people that are having a really difficult time, your heart bleeds for them. I want to say, hey, look, I'm here to talk. I'm a good ear. So, and that's the other thing. We have to create a way for people to learn how to listen better to each other. We have the art of listening. That's so, so important. And I wrote about that a couple of times because I feel like instead of thinking about what you're going to say next, listen to that person who needs someone to listen to them and then have a dialogue after that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about the MS treatment and care in the United States. What types of MS treatments, therapies, or interventions are more commonly recommended or accessible in the USA? Are there certain things?
Right. So, as I said, again, as when I was diagnosed, there were no medications at all. It took 7 years until the first one came out. And since then, there's over 20 that are FDA approved. Food and Drug Administration are approved, which everything in the United States, every medication has to be approved by the FDA in order for the doctors to prescribe it, in order for the insurance companies to decide, hopefully, to pay for it. So, and there's many more that are in research and clinical trials, and there's a lot of hope. I really have hope that these medications are going to get better and better for the patients. So generally, the DMTs, the disease-modifying therapies that started with beta-serine, Avonex, Copaxone, and then went down the line, and there's more and more that keep getting approved. Those are the ones that are being used in the United States. I'm on Ocrevus. That's a biannual infusion that has to do with the B cells. There's Kesimpta. There's many others. I'm not going to go into naming them all, but those are the ones that are generally used. Oh gosh, I'm having a blip.
the
Yeah,
autologous stem cell
thank you.
therapy.
Stem cell therapies are not approved yet by the FDA, but that said, people are still having them done, and I'm not really sure because I'm not up on it. It's not my forte. Where they're going. I know they used to go to Russia, I think, and
Russia
to
and Mexico is quite
Mexico.
popular.
Yeah, and a lot of times, and there is a center in New York City that does it as well. I'm pretty sure Selma Blair went there to the TIS center, and it's extremely expensive. But I just go and look at Selma Blair and see the extraordinary change that has happened to her because of that. I'm sure she does other things and I'm not privy to, but so I don't know. My hope was always on the stem cells, that would be really what was going to help us in the end. That and well, I think this is another question, but that and the new discovery of that the relationship between MS and the EBV, the Epstein-Barr. And so if they could find ways to prevent, the hope is they find ways to prevent Epstein-Barr, perhaps they could find ways to prevent MS or to get a hold on it in the beginning of the MS journey. Let's hope. So I think there's a lot of hope. I don't have hope for my generation. I'm 64, but I do have great hope for people coming after me, that there will be so much better medications, as I said before. And I just heard a very hopeful interview on YouTube. I think it was cognitive moment here. I think it was Dr. Hauser, Hauser, and he used that word that I never use, and he said cure. And that's a word that I would be afraid to use, but he was very, very hopeful that, I'm not saying in 3 years or something, but I'm saying in the next couple of decades maybe. He's very hopeful about a cure, and I rarely hear that word being said because that's a big jump.
Yes.
But hey, you know what? I'll send my prayers for that one. I'll put my money on that one. I would love to see people who are younger than me, like yourself, like others, that you would have that in your lifetime. Wherever I am by then, I'll be applauding it all the way. So it sounded kind of morbid, but I didn't mean it to be.
Would be lovely. Let's see. I mean, if they find the real cause or the causes, then it becomes an option. I think before finally what exactly caused MS, it's really hard to find a cure, but so many smart people are doing research on it. Let's see. How important is rehabilitation? I mean, did you do some rehabilitations during your time with MS, 30 plus years?
Oh yeah. For me, it's mainly been physical therapy. At the beginning of my journey, when I was diagnosed, I was not walking well. I couldn't feel my feet. I still can't feel my feet, but I'm more used to it now. Couldn't feel my feet, couldn't walk very well, and I couldn't use my hands properly. So I immediately went to a physical therapist who was excellent, taught me how to walk again, despite not being able to feel my legs, how to compensate and how it would feel doing so. And then I also went to an occupational therapist who helped me with my hands and with holding, writing utensils. That was before we were all using computers. I have to use a pen or a pencil. So that was really important. And so when I was pregnant with my son, I was also having a very hard time before the pregnancy. And so I had trouble walking and I had trouble really feeling my feet. So I got hand controls for my car to drive with a hand control, which was kind of cool and a lot of fun. But safety first. And I was using a cane at the time. So I did need physical therapy then. And just as an aside, my hormones kicked in while I was pregnant. Goodbye to the cane, goodbye to the hand controls. I felt so great. I felt like my pre-MS self, and people joked and said, you should always be pregnant. But anyway, that's another story. But recently I am now in physical therapy because I've been using a cane when I was started at 63. And I love this therapist more than any other one because he specializes in neurological disorders, which I've never had before. And he works with Parkinson's patients and MS. So he has taught me ways of walking that I haven't been able to do in 37 years. And it's extraordinary. It's like turning the clock back. I still use a cane for long distances, but if you can find a physical therapist that focuses on neurological disorders, I highly recommend. And I've got the recommendation from my neurologist, just to shout out to those people who focus on that discipline. It's really the best thing that I could have done was going to him.
Fantastic. Yes. I mean, I had a lady for the German podcast, but of course I will find, I guess, some people for the English one who was talking about. And of course, they really do different types of exercises, which helps a lot to use the neuroplasticity of our brain to bring back functions that you thought were totally lost, but can quite often at least come back to a certain amount.
That's exactly it. It's the neuroplasticity. You're teaching your feet, you're teaching your muscles how to do an exercise again. And if you repeat it again and again and again, which I'm sure you could explain this more in detail, but I know that my brain is just being rewired and saying, oh, that's how you're supposed to do that. And these exercises he does, it's preparing me to walk back out in the world again. If it's a paved street, a rocky street, I am learning how to do that again in ways that I never knew before and didn't really avoid it. So it's a new world.
Very good. Very good. Love to hear that. Are there any specific laws or regulations in the United States that protect the rights and promote the well-being of individuals living with MS?
Well, the main one that I know of is the American Disability Act that came in place in 1990, the ADA. And it's a civil rights law, really, that you cannot discriminate against someone based on their disability. And it also covers that employers must secure accommodations for their employees with disabilities, and public spaces have to also accommodate for people with disabilities, because I know this one gentleman, Jason De Silva, he's pretty big in the MS world here in the States, and he created an app called Access App, AXS App. No, AXS Map. And what it is people can tune into this app and say, hey, this restaurant, I couldn't get into the front door, and then it will alert people what needs to be done. And that's been very helpful to not just the people that need the help in wheelchairs and scooters and so forth, but also to get those places to accommodate the people with disabilities. So that was a huge landmark civil rights law that came into play. And, we were all applauding it. I don't know why it took so long, but there it is, all the same.
But that's good. I mean, that puts some pressure on these people, or let's say companies who are not yet there where they should be. I like that one. I don't know if something like this is existing in Germany, but
we also had a school that a child was in a wheelchair and they only had steps, and the parents went ahead and really rallied, and they put an elevator in the school, which was pretty extraordinary. So things like that, things that other people, able-bodied people, don't always think about. But even as you get older and you start creaking around, with your older bones, you're going to want that elevator or escalator,
Of course. Of
yeah.
course you do.
I hope you have it in Germany, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, we have quite some. Oh, let me. I think it's yes. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about the challenges and the support system in the United States. What types of healthcare professionals are typically involved in the care and management of MS in the United States, and what role do they play?
Well, everyone is, different depending on what they want. But generally speaking, everyone has a GP, a general practitioner, an internist, whatever you want to call it. And that's their starting point for general health. But aside from that, for MS, they go to a neurologist who is, a doctor of the brain. And so they are generally, sometimes they end up being more than just their neurologist. And somebody might just be going to them for all the answers. And that's fine. Well, no, the doctor might not think so, so I don't know. But so the neurologist does that. Now we all know that there are comorbidities to MS. So for instance, if you have an issue with your bowel or bladder, you want to go to a urologist, which I do because I'm a breeder of kidney stones. And it also has to do with MS because managing the bowel and bladder goes hand in hand with the information my neurologist wants to know. So you want to connect them. And also, I've had issues with bowel, and so I've gone to a pelvic floor therapist, which is a relatively new discipline, where they help people who do have issues of the bowel and bladder, and they're fabulous. I've been to 2 so far, and they're really good. There's not enough of them here in the States, and I'd only hope that more people will go out for that degree. And so, a cardiologist if you have heart issues, and then oncologists if, God forbid, you have cancer issues. But there are a wide array of doctors that you can go to, but they all, I don't know how it is in Germany or in the rest of Europe, but we have patient portals that we can go in. And so each doctor will see what the other one is saying or doing for the one patient. And it's all on a computer. And so that way they know, like, I just got my flu shot and I'm going to sign up for my COVID vaccine. Mm-hmm. And so, but I want my neurologist to see that, but I also want my GP to see that so they know what I'm on top of. So, and then there's other disciplines, gynecology and for younger women who want to have children, obstetrician, and it goes on. So there are a lot of disciplines. Depending on gastroenterology, how could I forget that one? Issues with the gut, which I also have IBS, and IBS, it was surprising. I can't remember the percentage of people with MS who also have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome.
Okay.
Which, your stomach has, your gut has issues with digesting and things like that. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So, so that's an important one because there's such a high percentage of people with MS that cross over and need that guidance as well. So, but your neurologist and your GP are the key people who really are there to help you. I'm always in either or both portals because there's always some questions going on. So, and that's how it's really done in the United States in general. There are people that are in more rural places that are farther from their doctors, and especially during COVID, when everybody was having Zoom appointments with these people, like you were saying, you're 7 hours away from a while ago from a doctor, and that happens as well. And that's when those patient portals come in handy, because then you can schedule a Zoom appointment with your doctor. So there's a variety of ways that works, but in essence, it's all working together, and hopefully you have some kind of insurance company that will help you pay for those bills. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, of course.
yeah.
That's a specialty of the US, I guess. But at least it's very good that you have that digital interaction. We are still working on that one in Germany.
I
Yeah.
love it. I mean, I never had that, in the first 25, even 30. I mean, it's relatively new to me. So we did not have that. I hope that you guys get it, because it really saves a lot. You can even make your appointments that way. You can ask your questions that way. And they have the nurse practitioners, who I love nurse practitioners, and they always get back to you. And that's really something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Now we have many systems, but not one platform where it all comes together. And some patients don't have digital stuff, some others have, and yeah, still an issue
Yeah.
here, but working on it. Let's say, work
Yeah.
in progress. Yeah, we are getting
I
there at
should say
one point.
that everything I'm talking about here is in general. I'm not speaking for the entire population,
Of
because there
course,
are
it's too
exceptions
huge.
to everything I say. Yeah.
Yes, and the US is such a variety of options and people, and it depends on if you're in a big city or if you're on the countryside, of course. But
And
at least there are systems like that in place, and of course it makes it easier for people, especially with a chronic disease and maybe some
yeah.
other comorbidities. Are
Mhm.
there any specific resources or support networks available for MS patients in the United States, such as patient associations or community organizations?
Well, for MS, I always say to rely on the MS organizations that we have, because there are many, and within those organizations, they not only provide the update information on research and developments, but they also sponsor a lot of programs that people can be part of, and support groups as well. And a lot of webinars that you don't have to leave the comfort of your home if you want to, even exercise programs, and speakers speaking about certain medications or side effects, or the mental health issues, or a wide variety. So, we have the National MS Society, we have MS Foundation, we have MS Association of America, we have Can Do MS, we have Race to Erase MS. Who am I leaving out? I don't want to leave out anybody. Well, there are others as well that I might have forgotten, and my apologies if I did. But they are extraordinary and dedicated people to help improve our lives as best as they can. And I can't say enough about all of them. And they do uh, uh, sponsor support groups locally or online. And if that's what somebody's looking for, I'd suggest that they give them a call or email those organizations. There are international groups, as you well know, that focus on MS too. But in the States, those are the general ones.
Yeah, and I think it's always good if people maybe who are listening to the podcast right now have specific questions to ask the national associations, because they will know best, and they will know. I mean, you have all these law for the different state. I mean, yeah, it might be sometimes a different situation for California than for New York
Right,
State, or
right.
for Florida, or I don't know, Nebraska or Kansas. So I guess it's always good to
And
talk
so
to
they
them.
have chapters for each state, and that's the beauty of it. National MS Society has chapters for each state, and that they work on a local level, and then they work on state, countrywide. So And they're really incredible people. Really, they really. You think the world has so many bad people, but I'll tell you, I disagree. I think that there are more good people in this world than not.
Absolutely, that's my opinion of the world as well. Most of the people are very nice, and some of them really take care a lot of other people, and there are only a few bad guys and
That's
girls,
right.
of
That's
course.
right. That's
to,
right. I'm
to
with you, Noah.
Are there any additional challenges to living with MS when you are over 60? I mean, I can talk about that because you said you are over 60, so
Oh,
I'm
that's
allowed.
okay. I'm an open book. And I think it's important that we state our age, actually, no matter what age we are. I never knew what the problem was with that. But yeah, I am 64. And I think that there are several things. I get disheartened when I hear patients that go to doctors and they're over 50 or 60 years old, and then the medications are no longer working for them. And I've heard that the doctors don't recommend that they start a new medication. And I'm not privy to what each individual case is about. Maybe there's something in the background that I'm not aware of. I don't know. But a lot of people are very upset that they're not being recommended to go on another medication, because life doesn't stop at 60
Hmm.
or 70 or 80. People are living longer lives, and they're living longer and productive lives. And so I don't agree with just stopping a medication because you're a certain age. I mean, who drew the line in the sand on saying what that age should be? So I think that that's a real issue. I also think a lot of times you might be living with an invisible illness, but I also think sometimes that when you're over 60, you kind of become a little bit more invisible than when you were younger. And so the conversations a lot of times are geared to, like, let's say up to 55. And I'll say, hello, we're over here and we're doing great things, and we still have value in the world, and we still matter. And we have the expertise and the experience. So I never understand why that is happening, but I've been writing about this a lot and talking about this a lot, that aging is just a natural progression of life, and we might be here for a very long time. So, let's include everybody. We're always talking about inclusion, but that also means to include people over the age of 60. So when I see all these advertisements, these PR campaigns, marketing campaigns for the different medications, let's say, or for organizations, most times I'll see younger people. And I can understand that, because most people are diagnosed at a younger age. But I think that doesn't reflect the reality that we are living longer and longer, and that the medications that came out, have changed that a lot. The longevity of people living with a certain quality of life with MS. So why not illustrate that? And why not show, like newly diagnosed, that there's an older person there? Hey, she's been living with that, and she's been living a good life within her abilities. Let's show that. I think that's an important area to be explored. And I'll keep talking about that. I also know that a lot of times I'll apply to different initiatives, and I know when I push that button over 55, I'll never hear from them again. So I don't know what the reason behind that is. It could be that there are certain ramifications or certain qualities that they don't want in whatever they're working on. But let's include everybody. Let's include everybody. So.
Absolutely. That's why I invited you to my podcast, because you are such an important advocate for so many years, and it's so important to speak up for people. And I mean, it's such a great task people reached, or such a great goal people reached, that people with MS, and even maybe with a more severe MS, can live now a longer life, and can do that with quite a better quality of life. So please.
That's
We
right.
reached
No,
that goal.
I'll
Don't
keep.
forget about them.
Yes, because, just like a newly diagnosed person will look to somebody their own age, I think that it's even equally supportive of them to see somebody that's lived with that, and that has, had children and got married, had children, and lived their life the best that they could. Okay, the trajectory of our lives changed with that diagnosis, but we could still live within that diagnosis and still have a pretty good life. and why not show them that too? So I think there should be equal opportunity on both ends.
Absolutely. And that brings us a bit to the next topic, education about multiple sclerosis awareness and advocacy in the US. Are there any specific initiatives or program in the United States that focus on raising awareness about MS and educating the public about the condition?
Well, I think I have to go back to your other question about the organizations that we have here in the States, all the MS organizations, because they're helping to create awareness about our disease. They're creating different campaigns to, I was part of, years ago, I was part of one campaign. I can't say who it was, but it was a pharmaceutical company. But they were doing a campaign to create awareness about the importance of yeah, see, that's cognitive ability there, guys. It was actually about the MS mind shift, and it was about, training your brain to be active, to be reading, to be doing puzzles, to learning new skills, so that your brain gets like, I always call it a Jane Fonda workout, but that's so US, so a good workout, so that as you age, it will be flexible and you will still, be as aware of life as you were when you were younger. But so some of the pharmaceutical companies are actually do programs that are very interesting, that aren't centered on the medication that they are producing, but because I won't be part of a campaign to push a drug, but I will be part of a campaign that's spreading awareness about MS. And so each of these wonderful organizations that I mentioned before are each doing their part in creating awareness. And I also have to say that the young advocates that I've met online really, are all creating awareness about MS and educating people in their own extraordinary ways, their unique ways. I'm so proud of each one of them, like they're my children. And I know I'm not that old, but they just, they have the ability that I didn't have of being able to do videos and being able to reach an audience worldwide, which I was never able to do, obviously. And they're doing it in ways which are showing people that MS is not a life sentence, that life can still be lived. No, it's not utopia, but there's still a way to live your life in a wonderful and productive way. And so those advocates are just inspiring me and inspiring the community in ways that was not available before. And I just applaud all of them. They're extraordinary. So
Yes.
I think that answered your question.
Yes, absolutely. And social media made or created a lot of options to speak up even as an individual and not having a big company on your back or, I don't know, a newspaper or whatsoever. So
Right.
that's a great thing about social media when it is used wisely.
That's right. And responsibly.
Responsibly, it can be so much good. Yeah. How can individuals with MS in the US actively advocate for themselves and ensure they receive appropriate care, support, and accommodations? I mean, you mentioned before that you met in your life good neurologists and not so good neurologists. So, what would you recommend if somebody is, let's say, not so sure if the practitioners or the healthcare practitioners are not as good as they should be?
Well, I've learned through trial and error, as I said, as you just pointed out, that you should always make a list of your questions. And I know that's said a lot, but it's really important because I went to one or two doctors that just wanted to know the basics of who I was, did not let me go through my list of questions, did not give me enough time. And one in particular never looked at me. He was busy on his computer typing in the information. And when I asked him, I told him that I had more questions. He said, "I'm sorry, but I have no more time allocated for you." So I just never went back to him again. So you really have to, I know it's a whole new language when you get diagnosed with MS. There are a lot of terms that are unfamiliar to you. And it's okay to ask questions always. Stay curious always, and read and read and read as much as you can about the disease, because you want to be well informed enough to ask the right questions and get the kind of care that you deserve. And so when you go to a doctor's appointment, you can ask the right questions that he will just have to answer, and be persistent in getting your questions answered. You have to speak up. You have to speak up. You have to speak out. And if you find somebody that's giving you a subpar examination, it's time to move on to somebody else, because you deserve to put together a medical team that will listen to you and will be there with you as you go along in your journey. And you also, if you don't feel comfortable advocating for yourself, then I suggest that you get someone who you trust to go along with you. And my husband goes to all of my appointments, as I said, and he remembers things sometimes that I don't, because when you're in a doctor's appointment and you're waiting to hear answers, you're not always hearing every single word he's saying or she's saying. So it's always good to have somebody come and be with you while you're at the doctor's office. It's always a wise thing to have somebody with you, if that's what you prefer. And I think that a lot of times these doctors are only allocated a certain amount of time for you, and that's just the way that it is with their practice, with the insurance companies, and so forth. So I just want people to be aware of the importance of a nurse practitioner, because they look at the whole person. They look at not just your physical side, but your emotional side. And they'll ask you questions that a lot of times, in my experience, a doctor does not ask. I really value the nurse practitioners because they go above and beyond in helping you. And so if you have questions and you don't feel like you can get to the doctor, talk to a nurse practitioner, an NP. Make sure that that's, it's an NP. And I can't say enough about them over the years. They have really been there for me in extraordinary ways, and devoting time to the questions that I needed to have answered when the doctor was just too busy. Now, I'm not putting down doctors, of course. I mean, we'd be nowhere without them. But I really value the nurse practitioners as well. So advocate, advocate, advocate. Speak up. Speak up. Or get somebody else to speak up, because you can't have you won't have anything answered if you don't ask the right questions. So
yes, and
you're entitled to it. It's your right. They have to treat you with respect and dignity always.
Absolutely. Yes, and with a chronic illness that very often at least progresses over time. I mean, depending on how good your treatment is, maybe it does not. Fantastic. But for most people, it does at least slowly. It is really important to get always the best treatment at that point in time, and to learn about the treatment. And as you just said, I mean, I just had to smile when you were mentioning that sometimes you don't remember everything, because I remember so many situations where at the beginning of my disease course, my doctor told me things and I followed that idea, and he of course kept on talking, and
you're back 2 thoughts ago, and
yes.
He's going on. That's when another person is great to have. I know what you mean. And then I couldn't find my words before when we were talking, and that happens too. So if you have it written down beforehand, when you're not as stressed, you'll know what to say. It's right there in front of you. I can't stress the importance of that.
Yes. So important. You already mentioned now a bit the role of family members. But what role do you think do they play additionally to, let's say, the appointment at the doctors, and of course as well the caregivers, in supporting individuals with MS in the United States, and what resources are available to support them? Because of course it's not always easy depending on the severity of the disease.
That's right. So as I said, I have my son and my husband really take care of me. They rally around me, help me rest when I need to, and my husband, as I said twice already, comes with me to my appointments. But see, I'm forgetting. What was the last question you asked?
What role do the family members in general play and the caregivers?
Yeah, well, I the term caregiver to me, it's not you, it's just in general. I like care partner because they
Care
are
partner.
partnering with you. I'm very happy that a lot of the organizations are doing programs to address the caregiver because there's a real burnout, especially with a more progressive kind of MS. And so they have programs and podcasts. I know that John Strum
Mhm.
of Real Talk MS has covered this before. It's so important because they have to be cared for too. They can't be on call all the time, help us with what we need, and then also take care of themselves. So I really hats off to all the MS organizations that are addressing this, and a lot of the campaigns that I've seen that people have started, advocates have started. I don't know what the hashtag is, with some kind of hashtag with care partner or caregiver, but it it showed care partners that they are important and that we are thinking of them and that we want to be there for them. And so I think that they need to have these programs as much as we need to have our programs because it's a team and you want to take care of your entire team, not just half of it. So that's really important. I also want to say one thing. It's for me is that from the time my son was born, we decided we were going to be very open about my MS. So uh, he's been aware of everything from day one, and he was there for the fundraisers that we did for my MS Center or for the National MS Walks for many years. I think it's important for children to understand, uh, and this is my opinion, for children to understand um, the severity or maybe sometimes it's not so severe, but how the illness manifests itself in the parent. So they will have the knowledge to go forth into life knowing about compassion and about kindness and about people working as a team and seeing how my husband and I are a team and my son is part of that team because don't we want to teach the next generation all of those things, and I think that might someday change the world around so that disability is not thought of in exactly the same way as it was when I was diagnosed. It is changing, and thankfully so. But I wanted to just stress that point. I feel it's very important.
Yes, absolutely, and I totally agree with you. And that's what I stressed a lot in the German podcast. That please don't be afraid of getting children because our children will have really tremendous soft skills. I think because they are aware of what it means to live not the perfect healthy life, and that with help you can reach so many goals and go much further. And that's something I think that is really hard to learn at university, but you can learn that in life. And it's
That's right. And that's exactly it. Because they're learning those life skills that will help them in their own lives going forward to knowing that life is not perfect, but it can be done.
yes. So coming to another question, what advice would you give to individuals with MS in the USA who may be feeling overwhelmed or discouraged, who are not at that point where you are, where I am, being strong, speaking up for ourselves? How can they maintain a positive outlook?
Well, I always say take one day at a time. Each day will be different. And I think that that's the better view. Because if you look down the long road, you have absolutely no idea what it's going to look like. MS is very unpredictable. You take one day at a time. And if you take care of your inner self, your emotional self, your spiritual self, find what helps you feel positive. What is it that makes your heart feel better? What is it that makes you feel joy or happy? Because you're going to rely on those things on the darker days when MS might not be so kind to you. And so I think that they need to lean on those things. For me, like I said, it was meditation. It's walks in the park. It's I do yoga or Tai Chi or things like that. that really lend themselves to chasing those thoughts away for a while, to getting the toxins out a while, and leaving the happiness, joy in for a while at least, and more it does help more and more. It's hard to say, how to stay positive. That too is different for everybody. But I hope that they do reach out to all of these organizations and really try to read about positive stories of things that have happened. Let's be honest, it's not going to be all positive. That's the way all of life is, though.
Yes.
Nobody in life, with or without MS, that's just the way life is created. But that said, there are many things that you can do to make your life more positive despite the unpredictability of the disease. So I would reach out there's so many advocates out there, that are willing to talk about what people need. I have a love-hate relationship with social media, but on Instagram especially, I've found a lot of really great advocates doing positive programs to reach the newly diagnosed, because I feel that they really need our strength, and they really need our insights into how to go about living with MS. I know that doesn't fully answer your question, but I would just say, well, first of all, you can always reach out to me, and I really mean that. They can reach out. But aside from that, I just read as much as you can and just live your life. Don't let MS stop you from living your life. Don't allow it to mess it up. It's not the sum total of who you are. The sum total of who you are is what's in your heart and what's in your mind, and the people that you surround yourself with, and the skills that you get, and the kind of work that you choose, and your surroundings. That's who you are at the core. MS is just a silly part of it that's trying to get in the way. Don't let it. I know it's easy to say, but just do your best not to allow that to take you over.
Yeah.
And that's the truth.
Fully
Right?
agree. Fully agree. Let's come to the quickfire Q&A session. Complete the
Uh-oh.
sentence. Yeah, quickfire. For me, multiple sclerosis is
Multiple sclerosis is a pain in the butt, but it's also made me keenly aware of the fragility of life and how I have to live every day as joyful and as best as I can.
yeah. Which website can you recommend for people living with MS in the USA?
Well, aside from my blog,
Yeah, please name it.
that's a big plug-in, and empoweredspirit.com. But all of the MS organizations that I named, I would really highly, highly recommend everybody to check them out. If you want me to say them again, National MS Society, Multiple Sclerosis Foundation, Multiple Sclerosis Association of America, Can Do MS, Race to Erase MS. Oh, well, Shift MS, I think that's
I think they are in
international.
the UK, but yes, they are English speaking. So
Yeah,
they
but
they
they're
are good.
younger, but they're a great bunch of people. And I really recommend newly diagnosed checking out Shift.ms.
Shift.ms, yeah.
I can't think of the other ones, but those are the ones that I would really want people to turn to.
Yep.
Please, please, please.
What development would you like to see in the field of multiple sclerosis in the next 5 years?
Oh,
Only 5.
I know my mind wants to say sure, but that's not going to happen, in my opinion. In the next 5 years, I'd like to see stem cells getting FDA approved to be affordable so that people could really get it. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be really something? I always thought stem cells would be the way at someday, and I really wish that would happen.
Yeah, I mean, approximately not for everybody, as far as I'm aware of what happens there. But
Yeah,
for sure, for the people with a very aggressive type of MS,
that's what I
it's
was thinking
really
of.
a great option. And in Switzerland, it's now part of the healthcare system. In Belgium, it is already. I got aware of that due to my podcast. But here in Germany, for example, we are in trial phase. So people are trying to get it into the system that it's paid for a certain dedicated group with very aggressive MS, but we are not yet there. And yeah, fingers crossed it happens in the US.
Well, I hope so, because I think that, most of the medications here are for relapsing remitting and secondary progressive. I would love to see primary progressive people being able to go and get the stem cells and get their life back as best as possible.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so we come to the end now. Finally, what message of hope or encouragement would you like to share with individuals living with MS in the United States? I mean, I think you did quite a lot, but still.
What hope would I offer them? Well,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what message of hope or encouragement would you like to share?
Yeah. I've been accused of being too positive, but I really think that if you hold that in your heart and you hope that for better tomorrows, even in meditation, when I do them I have a Headspace app that talks the meditations through, and it's all positive thinking, because that's what you want to, that's where you want to get to. So I would just say, for me, I've done this for 37 years, and I would hope others would follow, is just keep hope in your heart, think for the best, hope for the best, and every morning set your intention to hoping for the best, hoping for a good day, hoping for better medications, and hoping that you will keep a positive attitude about your MS journey. It can only be helpful.
Yeah, and stay active. Use that hope to stay active
Oh,
for
yeah.
your
Yeah. Stay
cognitive
active.
and your body,
Right.
of
That's
course.
right. That's right. Keep moving, keep thinking, stay curious. Always stay curious.
Yep. How and where can interested people find you online? Please name again your blog and your other channels where people can reach out to you.
Okay. So my blog is anempoweredspirit.com. I'm in the middle of updating it right now. On Instagram, I can't stand this
I
name.
think
It
you
was
are
the only
Cathy
thing
Chester,
available.
huh?
It was the Cathy Chester.
The Cathy Chester.
Hate that name, but that's what was available. The Cathy Chester. Facebook is Cathy Chester. On Twitter is Cathy Chess, CHES. And LinkedIn, it's just me, Cathy Chester. And what did I miss? I
You
think that's
mentioned
it.
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and your blog.
Well, Threads, but I'm not on there that much, but I'm just testing the waters. Cathy Chester as well.
Okay, great. And
Yeah.
of course, I will link all of them in the blog article and in the show notes of the podcast. So you don't have to remember them. You just have to look them up. Cathy, it was such a pleasure to talk to you again. And I'm sure we will do that in the future as well. But to talk to you officially on that podcast and to that you spread out all your positive spirit. And I mean, it's so important to keep on with a positive attitude, but as well to fight for yourself, or maybe not using the word fight, but advocate for yourself to live the best life you can with MS. And of course, the options, I guess, depend, but I used to say that when it comes to finding a job, probably astronaut is not a good option, but all the other things you more or less can do, because it's not that bad if you get a relapse. Astronaut, maybe not. Maybe don't go for traveling to
Don't go
Mars
for
or to
that.
Moon,
But go for your passions. Go
yes,
follow
but go
your
your
passions.
passions.
There's no reason why you can't.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me, Nele. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed the interview and learned something new about how it is to live with MS and how you can advocate for yourself. And by the way, next time I will be talking about the ACTRIMS 2023, which just happened in Milan. It was a 3-day conference, and it is the most important one in the whole world, so the biggest one. on multiple sclerosis, and a lot of experts present their newest research activities, what they found out, but also, of course, open questions. And I think this will be very interesting for you. Of course, it will just give a short summary, and I hope to get quite a lot of these experts later on for more in-depth interviews. So tune in again and hear you next time. Thank you for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. You may also be interested in the previously published episodes and posts, which you can find at ms-perspektive.com/podcast. Perspective with a K. You can also get a free PDF with 11 tips for your positive impact on MS at ms-perspektive.com/newsletter. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach me at Nele at ms-perspektive.com or on social media. See you next time.